Aston Villa have pulled off a huge victory after beating Tottenham by 2-1, and in this video we're going to be breaking down how they did it. We're going to be taking a look at the tactics that Unai Emery utilised to stifle Tottenham's creativity, and we're going to be taking a look at those all-important goals that earned Aston Villa's 5th win in a row in all competitions. Villa's start wasn't what they would have wanted at all, conceding early on, and this is the goal. A good piece of play from Tottenham following on from a corner. The ball gets recycled back down this left-hand side towards Mohamed Kudus, who's about to whip in a really dangerous cross. But what I want you guys to notice is what's happening over towards the back post here. You've got Morgan Rogers and you've got Palhinha. Keep your eyes on them as we go through this, because Mohamed Kudus is going to play a brilliant cross over towards that far side. And as Villa start to come out, they've set their defensive line, but at the same time they need to be aware of the runners in and around them, and that's what Morgan Rogers doesn't necessarily do too well. As the ball gets whipped over, you've got Rogers just underneath this cross. Palhinha is reading this really well, and he manages to get the ball back into the middle of the box, and then from that point, although your defensive line is now retreating back towards its own goal, to be able to deal with this situation, you need players to be switched on. You need Kamara to be switched on here. You need McGinn to be scanning and looking around. And at the moment, they're not doing that. At the moment, you've got Bentancur in quite a bit of space. It obviously gets knocked back by Palhinha, and Bentancur gets a fantastic opportunity to get that shot off. But look, there isn't a player anywhere near him, and they realise and react far too late. It ends up being 1-0 to Tottenham early on. And like I said, not the start that Villa would have wanted. Villa go a goal down early on, but it was the way that they managed to bounce back that was so impressive, and in particular the way that they managed to stifle Tottenham's creativity and isolate Xavi Simons in particular, utilising their really high line, condensing that midfield area. What Villa did so very well was prevent the ball going into Xavi Simons to begin with. Tottenham played their own part in this as well, especially with the team selection. The profile of Palhinha and Bentancur really did lend itself to not being able to progress the ball forwards. The vertical passing and the breaking of lines just wasn't there, and in particular when Tottenham had the ball and looked to build from the back, you had Bentancur dropping in between Van de Ven and Danso, but the on-the-ball profile of Palhinha meant that Tottenham weren't able to progress as freely as I'm sure they would want to. What ended up happening was Onana and Kamara either placed themselves onto Simons or pushed forwards to prevent that progression through Palhinha or Bentancur, depending on which player was playing deeper. This ended up creating almost a divide and a rift between the Tottenham defence and midfield lines and their forward lines, meaning that they weren't able to progress through the centre of midfield. Onana and Kamara doing a fantastic job of isolating Simons and creating that massive divide. It was this divide that prevented Tottenham from progressing centrally, forcing them into situations out wide, but in particular preventing the ball from going to their main creator in Xavi Simons, that main number 10. And I've got an illustration for you right here. This is from MarkStats, a great place for statistical analysis and to be able to get really good illustrations on what happens in these games. And as you can see on this left-hand side, you've got Spurs and you've got Aston Villa on the right, and this is their pass map. Now what you can actually see is number 7 in the centre of that Spurs midfield isn't getting the ball at all, nowhere near often enough. It was that isolation that prevented Tottenham from finding any kind of momentum centrally, forcing them into those wide situations, and it meant that really they didn't have an outball through the centre. Here you can see a really good example of this. You've got Kamara marking Xavi Simons, you've got Onana pushing forwards onto Palhinha, you've got McGinn and Gesson ready to repress onto either the right or the left-hand side. And of course, you've got the two Aston Villa forwards looking to pressurise the person who's on the ball. This prevented any kind of progression for Tottenham centrally, and it forced them to go long or down those wide channels. It was through this that really prevented any kind of domination for Tottenham, especially through those central areas. And then you're pushing them out wide. And in particular, you're targeting Mohamed Kudus, a player that Tottenham would really look towards, but he had a really poor game, and that was due to the dual winning of Luca Dean and John McGinn. Kudus actually didn't complete a single dribble in this game, and he lost most of his ground duels, only winning 2 out of 13. It was through this that Villa really funneled Tottenham down those wide areas and managed to win those 1v1 situations, getting them back into the match. Once they had their defensive platform, stifling Tottenham's creativity and forcing them into a position that they were comfortable with, it was then about Aston Villa turning that momentum into goals. Now, let's not get this twisted. Villa's goals actually combine for an XG of 0.37, which means that the goals that they actually scored weren't particularly likely, but that does mean that they had a bucket load of quality, and we're going to be seeing that in both situations. The first goal, we have Matty Cash out on this right-hand side. He's going to be passing over to Cassand in just a moment. The moment he does that, he continues his run. Look at this, driving forwards into that inside right channel, and what this does is drag away not one but 2 Tottenham players, leaving Morgan Rogers in space in that inside right channel just on the edge of the box. He receives the pass from Cassand and then tries to play a ball into Matty Cash. It gets intercepted by Xavi Simons, but fortunately goes straight back to him. It's at that moment that Morgan Rogers takes the ball for himself, dribbles through into a situation and decides to have a shot at goal. It's through this and through his connection with the ball that it's so fantastic, and this is what beats the keeper. Look at the position of his foot. It's flat, it's going across the ball, and it's so true, the strike, that it's able to combine power but also a bucket load of accuracy. So very impressive, firing into that top left hand corner, and I believe catching Vicario off guard. It was a sensational hit that really got Villa back into the game, and at that point it's 1-1. And before we end, guys, let's take a look at Aston Villa's second goal, the goal that won them the game. And if you thought the first one was good, this one could be even better, especially with the build-up. We have Joao Palhinha clearing the ball from a corner, and it goes over towards John McGinn. It gets headed down towards Matty Cash. Now, what Matty Cash does here on the halfway line is nothing short of ridiculous, and if he means it, it could be one of the passes of the season already. On the half volley, he swipes it so cleanly, so purely, that it goes directly over towards that right hand side. And if you thought the pass was sensational, this touch from Luca Dean is absolutely wonderful. He brings it down and passes it over towards Emi Buendia out on that right hand side. He drifts in the field. Now, what Tottenham don't do well enough here is close down the dangerous player. It allows him to take a couple of touches and set himself. The moment that he's able to set himself, he fires it with his left foot towards that bottom left hand corner, getting past Vicario once more. But it is a sensational hit. It is a wonderful hit, and it gives him side the real ascendancy and gives Villa that all-important win and all 3 points. That's 5 wins in a row in all competitions now for Aston Villa, who really do look like they're finding their form. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts on the goals and the game in the comment section below. What did you make of Aston Villa? What did you make of Tottenham? I would love to hear from you, so please do get involved. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.